Hello, everyone. It's your girl Gabrielle from A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. So, if you're not already familiar with us, this is the program where we talk about important issues. We talk about important issues regarding education, physical health, mental health, social services, or anything else that is steamy. So we are a tutoring company. So, we were trying to stay in a lane here. But we do like to have honest discussions about very important topics. And today, our topic is, I couldn't think of a better title, but saving the environment. I'm going basic. Saving the environment. And that is our topic for today. And I have a guest with me who's going to help me with this discussion. His name is Raju Rajan. I hope I'm saying his name right. Let me tell you a little bit about him. So, Raju Rajan is a technologist with a strong communitarian ethic. He came to the United States from India to obtain his PhD in communication networks at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. He has enjoyed a long career as a researcher, consultant, and a technologist. His strong entrepreneurial ethic has led him to found two IT startups, as well as a number of community groups aimed at organizing people for systemic change. He is currently active with Long Island Together, a progressive collective that organizes around education, immigration, and social change, as well as ReWild Long Island, which brings native plants to public spaces and private yards, which we will discuss a little bit. We'll talk more about the organization a little bit later. Raju resides in Port Washington, New York, with his wife Sonia Arora, who is an educator slash community organizer. His son is Kabeera Singh, a Schreiber High School student, and he has a cat named Lucky who does nothing. Raju serves as the president of the board of ReWild Long Island. Awesome. So I'm going to bring him on to the show right now.
Hey, how are you, Gabriel? Good to
I'm
see you.
good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Awesome. Did I say your name right? I'm sorry.
You said my name very well.
Very awesome. So you have an interesting way of saving the environment, and I wanted to have you talk more about that, which is connect, and I'm sure it is connected to your nonprofit. So I'm going to hand you the floor, and please share.
Thank you, Gabriel. So when we say, we want to save the environment, I think, it's important to recognize there are two major crises that everybody is worried about, right? One is climate change. Of course, everybody is aware of that. Our climate is changing largely due to human activity relating to putting carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. That's something we should be concerned about. And the second is the biodiversity crisis. So this is something that people are a little less aware of, but it is just as cataclysmic, which is, there's a lot of important species, insects, birds, worms, beetles, mammals that are disappearing off the face of the earth just simply because we of human activity again, right? So these are two crises. Everybody's aware of them. Anybody who thinks too deeply about them, you just get like a sinking feeling in your heart saying, oh my God, this is too big for me and it is too important, so let me go think about something else or do something else. Right? That's kind of reaction we have because when the problem is sounds or seems too overwhelming for individual action, we can do our little bit, but we feel like, oh my God, this is not going to be changed. But here's a simple, not solution to the problem, but a simple way to respond to the problem that does not ignore it, but at the same time makes your contribution to it in a way that is fun, that is engaging, and that can actually be rewarding to you personally. And that is just go outside in your front yard and backyard, in your community spaces, whether it's a church or a schoolyard or a soccer field, and look at ways in which we can make that sustainable. Right. So, and that's kind of what the nonprofit that I work with, which is ReWild Long Island, is about. Again, our name is ReWild. Rewilding is it's a global movement at this point, and yet it's a very local movement in the sense that it's about addressing problems in a way that ecologically makes sense in every location. So when we say rewild Long Island, we are going to be very concerned about, for example, the plants and the animals and the species of bees and insects and pollinators that are native to Long Island, and talk about how can we bring those back and how can we address the biodiversity crisis while at the same time addressing the climate crisis. I hope that makes sense, Gabrielle. I mean,
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, can you talk more about what's happening to the plants, what's happening to the bees and the animals specifically?
sure. Yeah. So, this is a very common experience that many of us have had, right? When I was a kid, I grew up in India. When we used to drive, either to vacations or go and visit relatives or whatever, we used to take a car or a bus and drive, 100 miles, 200 miles. Uh, you would always have to stop 3 times and wipe the windshield because the windshield would get full of bugs, especially in the rainy season. It'd be full of bugs. This last year, I went to India and I drove almost like 250 miles in a car to get to where my parents are. And there was not a single bug on the car, even though I was driving right after the rains. And that was horrifying to me, right? I mean, and this is an experience we've all had. And so you wonder what happens. Where are those millions and millions of, when you total them up, it's possibly billions or tens of billions or hundreds of billions of missing bugs throughout the world. Now, what happened to them, right? Why did they disappear? And why is that horrifying, right? They disappeared because of, multiple reasons, right? One is just we keep building houses and taking over farms and fields and forests and keep gobbling up, and suburbs keep growing. So that's just concrete development. We put lawns, we take away habitat, right? So when we put a lawn, we put in grasses that are not native to Long Island. The grasses that are native to, I don't know, Central Asia or Central Europe or Mediterranean, depending on the grass type that you're putting in. So you're removing in habitat, you're removing sustenance, you're removing places to hide for many of those insects, and they are just disappearing because they don't have enough food. The second is we use pesticides widely. And every time somebody swats a mosquito in the backyard, they're like, oh my God, call the mosquito squad or whatever and let them spray. And the point is, it does not only get rid of mosquitoes, it gets rid of all the good bugs, bad bugs, ugly bugs, pretty bugs, everything, right? It's a genocide. It's just like mass murder, right? So and the reason why that is very important to us is bugs are a big part of the food chain. They are a big part of the protein that birds get, that animals get. So it's up and down the food chain. You're decimating a lot of things, and that causes an ecological catastrophe that is waiting to happen for us, right? And some portions of it are already happening. You might have heard of the colony collapse disorder. Bees are disappearing, and we know how important bees and other pollinators are in making many of our food crops, in many of our fruits and vegetables. So really, the important thing about rewild is that putting the wild back, that is bringing many of those species back. And the easiest place to bring them back is your front yard, your backyard, your schoolyard, your churchyard, your golf course, whatever. I mean, whatever um, private or public space exists around your house, that you have access to, that your community has access to, put a few native plants in there, you will be amazing. And when I say native plants, you have to look at plants that are native to your region, meaning they evolved in your region. If you're in North America, they're typically plants that grew in your part of North America before Columbus got here, let's say, right? Um, and so and those are important because there's this notion, right, of co-evolving. That is, those plants, when they were here millions of years ago and they evolved and they first formed the flowers, they formed those flowers because pollinators would come and turn those flowers into a fruit or a seed. Any flower you see, it needs a pollinator to turn it into a fruit or a seed. And that relationship, close relationship between plants and pollinators. And when I say pollinators, it could be insects, it could be bees, it could be moths, it could be wasps, it could be birds, it could be bats. There are lots of pollinators out there. And that relationship between plants and pollinators is one of symbiosis. One depends on the other for food, the other depends on the pollinator for propagation. And that relationship, is a big vital part of our ecosystem. And to bring that back means to bring native plants. You put a native plant in your backyard. For right now, I have like asters and goldenrods that are blooming in my backyard. And you can see they're covered in bumblebees and tiny little sweat bees and all kinds of bees that I don't even have names for, right? And then, you have other bugs that come around for you have aphids and ladybugs and ants and everything else that forms a part of that ecosystem. So it's just amazing how, when you start with putting native plants and other provide habitat in your living areas, in your front yard, backyard, community spaces, how much these bugs are waiting to come back. And that's a great thing. I mean, there's nothing as satisfying as sitting there and watching a hummingbee come by your yard, or a dragonfly or something else that you never saw before just suddenly makes an appearance out of nowhere. So beautiful, and it shares your space with you. That's a terrific feeling.
Whoa. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. All right. So I want to talk about a little bit more about the native plants in a minute, but I wanted to go back to an earlier point about, I mean, you brought up when we use pesticides, it's like a genocide to all the bugs. So can you talk about why we as humans should care that there is this mass genocide of insects and bugs?
Yeah, it's a kind of like, on one side it's a moral question, right? It's like, if somebody comes and says, I'm going to kill all the people in the world, and you're like, oh, I got to give you a moral reason why you shouldn't. You're always like, oh my God, what can you say to somebody who's like going about doing that they didn't already know, right? So on one side, these are things that existed for most part, right? Not mosquitoes most likely we brought them with us from wherever, right? Asia and Africa into North America especially, right? But for most part of the bugs that I'm talking about are bugs that existed here for millions of years. They were here before us. They shared that. I mean, like, it is just moral that we should share the earth with them. The other is, of course, they form such an important part of our food system and of our ecosystem that, everything from um, uh, getting rid of our trash to making food for us to making medicines to so much wealth of genetic information that they have, right? There are human uses, there are human purposes, and then there are moral purposes. And I think both are important. And I think it's important to incorporate both in how we address the problem, right? Is that fair, Gabrielle?
Yes, that's fair. Absolutely. All right. So now back to the native plants, right? So can you talk more about why it's important to use plants that are native to the land that we're on as opposed to importing them from somewhere else?
Okay, good. So let's get this straight. There are important reasons why we need to import plants as well. I'm not going to give up, rice or wheat or or soy, right? I mean, many of the plants, apples, right? Many of the plants that we eat in North America are not native to North America, and they're fine. They're good human reasons why we need them. But on the other hand, putting native plants in your yard, there's a lot of benefits. In addition to just bringing insects and helping against the biodiversity crisis, many of the native plants have very deep roots, right? I mean, especially wild plants have deep roots because nobody's watering them, and there are days they go without water. So, given that they have deep roots, they sequester carbon from the atmosphere into the ground. So there's like definitely some carbon sequestration happening, whereas your lawn grass pretty much has roots about that deep, right? Especially if you're watering in a shallow way. Second, because these plants are drought tolerant, you don't need to water as much. You definitely don't need any herbicides or pesticides or anything like that because, again, they're native to here. So they've seen all the bugs that nature has to throw at them and they've figured out a way around them and they can still flower. And many of these are native perennials, so you don't have to plant them every year. So it's kind of like much easier for you to maintain. I mean, I have a lawn, or at least a piece of portion of my ground that is still lawn, and there's a portion of my ground that has native plants, and the amount of work that I need to do in terms of the native plant area compared to, say, the roses and the dahlias and the petunias, it's much very because I need to cut them down twice a year. No, yeah, I don't need to really put any pesticide. I don't need to really put down any fertilizer. I may water them a few times a year when it gets really, really hot. And even if I don't, they'll survive. I think it's just that they're prettier, and I'll get prettier flowers if I water them, right? So the maintenance, it's not zero by any means, but definitely the maintenance is lower, the cost is lower, the environmental benefit is much higher, both in terms of climate change and protection, as well as biodiversity, bringing back biodiversity. So what's not to love about it? As long as you select the right plants that are pretty and work well for your space, you know it's really a win-win for you to learn about them.
So how would we know which plants are native to um well, I guess native in terms of by state, by country. Can you I don't know if you
Yeah, sure.
can.
Absolutely. It's really by ecosystem, right? I mean, because it's not like plants came with a zip code, right? But they're ecotypes. So if you live in a coastal northeast ecotype, or if you live in a desert ecotype, or if you live in a swamp, or these are all ecosystems that existed. And one very good way of doing it is, again, the internet. There is a site, say for example, wildflower.org, or there's a Audubon plant native plant database, or there's Doug Tallamy, who's really amazing, a speaker and researcher in this area. He has a website. I will say, Gabriel, I'll send you all those links. We can put those links in the show notes or somehow share them. That would be awesome. But just if you want to type it in right now, I think a good place to go is to go to wildflower.org, and they have a native plant database. You can click on it. You can actually put your state or even your zip code in there, I think, and find a list of different types, right? I mean, say when I say native plants, it's not like it's going to be like one plant yay tall or whatever. It's, you want trees, you have trees, you have shrubs, you have grass, you have ground cover, you have vines, you have ferns, you have, so there's so many different types. And depending on what you're trying to do with a specific space, if you want to create a pollinator garden, you may want certain kinds of flowering plants. If you want a butterfly, if you want milkweed to attract butterflies, you're going to get a different kind of a garden, different kind of plants. If you want fruits, edible fruits that you can eat, in my region, it's blueberries, and I can get native raspberries and pawpaws, right? Then it's a different set of plants. Or if you just want to cover or screen out those nosy neighbors and you don't want to see them, then it's a different set of shrubbery you can use, right? And you can mix these uses. So it's a wide new world of plants that some of them you may be familiar with, right? Echinacea, for example, many people in my area are familiar with echinacea, which is native, or black-eyed Susans, which are native, but they may not be familiar with many other plants. And I was not when I started doing this, and I'm still learning a lot, right? I mean, so it's really fun. Especially now with internet and mobile phones, the way to acquire, the way to learn. Previously, like 20 years back or 30 years back, you might have had to go to the library, go through big books and say, which plant is this? Oh my God, I can't tell if it is this one or that one. Now everything is so easy. There are apps like iNaturalist that just you just can point your camera at a plant and say, what kind of a plant is this? Oh no, where does this come from? Within seconds you have that information. So there has never been a more fun time to learn about plants, or easier time to learn about plants, I would say, right? And I'm not a person. When I was a kid, I used to hate like looking at those plant books for biology and saying, I can't make out if this is a seed or a flower.
Awesome. All right, I'll put up that link real quick. Can you tell me the address?
Wildflower. Yeah, wildflower. Did I say wildflower.org? Yeah,
Wildflower.org. So I
I'm sorry. Did I
will
miss
put
that?
that up there.
Yeah, it is wildflower. It is wildflower.org. For some reason, it was not coming up for me right away. Um,
Awesome, awesome.
it's wildflower.org. And then there is also, I would say,
Okay.
National Wildlife Federation.org. Yeah,
Okay.
nwf.org. Perfect.
Okay. So that's actually the correct address.
Yeah,
Okay.
NWF or Wildflower. Both are beautiful resources.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So now let's get into your mission a little bit. So uh, during our preliminary meeting, we talked about sustainable landscaping, and we broke it down into four
4 parts.
subcomponents. Yes. Can we can I have you go into that?
Okay, no worries. So, and there are 4 parts. So when we talk about sustainable landscaping, there are 4 really interesting that you can think about. You can start with any one of them. Don't need to do all 4 of them right away. Over time, you'll find yourself wandering into more areas. So the first is of course native plants. Do some research and at least a small area, even if it's 5 plants, even if it's 15 plants, or whatever the number you can deal with. Just put a few of them in and start like looking at them, observing them closely, and you'll see the wealth of um, biological pollinators that they attract. So that's one. The second is just grow your own vegetables. This is always a great thing, especially if you have kids, to teach them. I mean, I've never seen I have a lot of kids in my neighborhood that come to my yard, for example, and the best way to get them to eat vegetables is for them to grow it. And if they pluck it, if they pull a tomato off a vine, they'll eat it, right? Because they plucked it. It's kind of like becomes an adventurous story. It's a great way to get the whole family eating healthier and really on the health, saving the environment, so to speak, right? Because the food that grows in your backyard has the least amount of carbon emissions associated with it. The third is, of course, grow your own food. You need to provide fertility in order for those tomatoes to come back healthy every year. The best way to do that is composting, right? So your kitchen waste is not trash. Your yard waste, whether it's leaves or clippings, are not trash. They are like really food waiting to go back. That's fertility. That's like bags and bags of fertilizers that you could buy from the store for good hard-earned dollars. That's what it represents, because this is all good carbon, good nitrogen, good calcium, good potassium, that if you were able to compost it, or use worms, use a compost pile, use a composter. There's so many different ways of doing it. And the internet's full of ideas on how to compost. If you could take that trash and not throw it out, have them dump it away in some landfill and generate methane to pollute the atmosphere. Instead, if you could somehow turn that into fertilizer, that composting, that really helps you grow your vegetables with practically zero additional cost. And then finally, water, right? Depending on the part of the United States or where you live, water may be plentiful or water may be scarce. But at any rate, if you're pumping water from under the ground, it has a carbon footprint. And there's no good reason to waste the water that just flows off your roof. So putting something like a rain barrel in, collecting that water, using that water for your plants, it's just common sense. It's a good thing to do. And it just makes it more convenient. I mean, there are parts of my yard where I don't have access to a hose or a pipe. Instead of putting a pipe in there, if there's a rain gutter running and you put a rain barrel right there, collect it off, divert it off the gutter, hey, you're saving yourself some extra dollars. You're saving the planet, right, so to speak. It's just like small fun things that you can do in and around your yard. And all these things interrelate, right? I mean, if the fact that you're collecting water, you're building soil, by composting, by growing organic food, and by putting in native plants. All these like work very well together. The organic plants will obviously generate a lot of carbon, which you can then compost and put in your uh, 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 organic vegetable patch. Likewise, the native plants will attract tons of pollinators, which will go, a pollinator bee that comes all that way to sit on your, I don't know, coneflower is just as likely to go and sit on your tomato plant next, and that means that you're going to get tons of good, great fruit. So it all works well together, and having native plants attracts a variety of different insects that eat other insects, which are going to in turn around and eat the bugs that prey on your vegetable garden. So it all works well together. You provide habitat, you provide food, you provide sustenance, and you share your yard with creatures other than those that live in your house.
So where can we, so focusing on the plants, where can we get organic, native plants, organic vegetables? Where can we get those things?
Okay, organic vegetables should be easier because even now, even like say for example, if you go to Home Depot or whatever it is, right? They have vegetables, and you can pick out organic or not organic, but it doesn't matter. I mean, in my mind, like it matters. At least personally, I don't worry about whether a plant about that size was grown organically or not, as long as I can bring it home and make sure that for the next 6 months it doesn't get pesticide or this thing. I'm not worried. But you can get organically raised vegetables. Home Depot, Walmart, whatever is your big box store nearby, many of them do carry. Vegetables are easy. Native plants are so much harder, and that's one of the things that we do as a nonprofit, which is ReWild Long Island. We go work with wholesale nurseries that specialize in native plants and put up a plant sale, make it possible. And it's like almost 200 people will be this fall buying from sort of ordering plants through us. So we are kind of collectively ordering and then bringing it in and then delivering, sorting, doing that. So that is still work in progress. If you get lucky, some of the box stores sometimes have native plants, but you will have to do a little bit more work there. Maybe one of your small local nurseries, if you go and tell them, hey, I need a native plant or two, they may be able to order it for you. So that is still, we are still in early days of awareness and marketing for that. But that's a good reason. I mean, if you get really hooked on it or you're knowledgeable about it and you want to do something, that's a great thing that you could do. Organize a few people and then do some collective buying from wholesalers. That's always a great way to get that in. If you're on Long Island, definitely you can check out ReWild. That is www.rewildlongisland.org. That is our website. And actually, our fall sale just closed, but again, we'll be back in spring. We sell native plants in spring and fall because those are the two good times to plant natives. So we will be coming back in spring with a whole selection of native plants, which are appropriate for this eco region, which is Long Island, maybe parts of New York, Westchester, Connecticut, right? Into New Jersey. But I don't know if you want to come all the way into Long Island to pick up your plants. But if you do, we are here.
All right. And then, I mean, not everyone is, on the East Coast. So, if there's, I mean, there's probably a lot of like plant stores, flower stores
Yep.
around where people are that they can get those types of plants.
Yep,
That's
absolutely. 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 Yep. Do your research. The first thing is to be aware. You may actually turn out that you have a few native plants in your yard and you want more, right? So the first thing is do your research, figure out what plants you do want and like, and then you can always work with a local nursery and give them business. And if 4 or 5 people are ordering, they'll definitely be incented to order it, special order it for you. So
Good to know. Good to know. Good to know. All right. So we are starting to wind down a little bit. So, do you have any final advice to our viewers about ways or simple ways that they can spruce up their yards, make it more environmentally friendly, or community gardens, or even maybe people they may not have a yard or any plants to keep in their home or any final advice that you want to give?
sure. I mean, I think, look, exactly as Gabrielle said, right? I mean, even if you put a plant out in your front windowsill or whatever, I mean, you can definitely choose a native plant for that. They are just so wide in their habits and they're wonderful in their diversity. So definitely researching and getting them is key. I think the most important thing to do is to get started, right? I mean, always any of these journeys. I mean, like I've been gardening for a number of years. I've been gardening with native plants for the last few years, and it's a learning experience. I mean, it never gets old, and every year, every season is, anybody that's a gardener knows every season is different, and you're always learning something and trying something and forgetting things and then remembering them again and putting them back. So it's a journey. It's a great journey to embark on, and the most what for me the most pleasant thing about it is that it gets away from the toxicity of our social media and our public life, and whether it is like politics or media or what somebody said on Twitter. It just gets very ugly and painful. This is a good way to unplug, be in your space, be in your zone, put your hands in the ground, feel the soil, touch the plants, look at a bee, just cut out from all that. It is really good. It's a really great way to disengage and recharge from everything else, right? So do get started, and I hope that you get passionate about and enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Raju. That was amazing, and I hope you guys were paying attention. So let me just put up my little banner here. All right.
Thank you.
So, you guys, you can learn, sorry, this is the fly. You can learn more about ReWild Long Island at www.rewildlongisland.org. So the web address is scrolling right below. And they are only on Facebook. That's their only social media account right now, so you can check them out on Facebook. Of course, all this information will be provided to you in the description. And if you'd like to get more information about ways you can spruce up your lawns or your greenery, you could send them, you can email them, which I put on the screen as well, I forgot.
Perfect.
Raju at rewildlongisland.org. So normally in our broadcast, I would ask you guys to donate to our crowdfunding campaign, but since we have a nonprofit organization, I'm going to encourage you to send your funds in their direction, right? So I'm just gonna,
Always.
yes, I'm gonna talk about
Uh,
that a little bit. So, ReWild Long Island is a 100% volunteer effort dedicated to bringing rewilding to our private and public spaces. So, your donations will primarily go towards putting native plants in public spaces, getting the word out, and advocacy. So, they welcome any donations, large or small. You can also earmark your donations for the summer program to fight hunger and climate change. ReWild Long Island is a 501c3 nonprofit, so your contributions are now tax deductible. You can make your donations by mail, you can mail them a check, or you can donate online. All that information is on their website, so go to their website to learn more about how you can donate to this organization. And they're
Thank you.
also looking for volunteers. So, an annual membership to ReWild Long Island is a great way to help a fledgling organization. Your contribution of $50 per annum makes you eligible for discounts and services and during our plant sales, their plant sales. Whoops. You also get a special member shopping window where your orders are prioritized should nurseries run out of stock. They are an all volunteer organization, so 100% of your money goes towards happy butterflies. That's a very important point to reiterate. You can also become a member by contributing your volunteer time and energy. If you volunteer over 6 hours this year, you can get a free membership for the following year. So, of course, for more information on how to volunteer, please visit them online www.rewildlongisland.org. So, definitely, please support the organization, donate your time, donate your money. You can go to the website to get more information.
Thanks, Gabriel. That's wonderful. A great job of putting all that information out in such a nice way. Thank you.
I try. I try. All right, I'm going to put you backstage, and it is just you and me, guys. So I'm going to put up my information below. And that concludes our episode for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Please check out our YouTube channel for more videos and clips. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to, sorry, there's a fly. And don't forget to leave a comment below about your thoughts about this episode today. And you can also find us, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Eventbrite, and WhatsApp. So all of our contact information is scrolling below. And if you would like to learn more information about our company in particular, if you want to learn more about our services, our workshops, or you just want to learn more about me, Gabrielle, you can come to our website at www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. And that is it for our episode. Please tune in next time for the next episode. I look forward to seeing you. Thank you for coming. Signing off. Bye.